Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I am reviewing a notebook from one of my favorite brands of notebook, but more because of the quality of the paper. It is this notebook here. This is the Oxford A5 journal from the Signature Journals series. So this is the A5 and it contains optic paper, 90 GSM optic paper there. Now, I've spoken a lot about optic paper because I think it's really good paper. I think it's great because it's truly fountain pen friendly, but also it's nice and thick. It has relatively low show through, all of that kind of stuff. And it's available in this notebook and a range of others from places like Officeworks. Now, primarily, Oxford have made notebooks that have been available, like the black and red notebooks, things like that, through the UK. A few years ago, I bought a bunch of them at a WH Smith in, I think it was London, potentially, Gloucester, somewhere like that. But now that these are available at Officeworks here in Australia, I can get this great quality paper in this and other versions, like this sort of like spiral bound student notepads as well, that use this paper. So I'm going to take you on a little tour of this notebook and we're going to talk about pros and cons. Okay, so as you can see, comes a little belly band there that gives some basic information, the size and the fact it's got 160 pages, all of that kind of stuff. Now, Oxford paper is used by Oxford, of course, and also Hamlin. Hamlin, I think, being one of the sister companies of Oxford in this. Now it says also here it is Scribsy compatible. Now Scribsy is this an app that you get that scans the page using the camera on your smartphone and then allows you to archive it as notes for sharing and all of that kind of stuff. It's a very cool system. Simple, there's lots like it, and yeah, you scan it, you save it, and you can share it. It's great. I'll show you a bit more about that when we get into the actual notebook itself. So it has an elastic band. It's not a tight elastic band. It's just sort of, it does the job of holding the book shut. Now, the cover of the book is like this sort of what they call a hard-wearing textured cover. It's kind of rubbery. It's definitely not faux leather. It is a rubbery sort of feeling to it, and it is textured, smooth on the binding side here, and this sort of textured thing with the little embossed logo there that continues across onto the back as well. If I take off this belly band now, we open it up, you get an information sheet about Scribsy, which is cool. It's a really, as I said, good system. Check it out if you're not familiar. I've just clamped off a couple of pages here that I've used at the front, but I've done some writing tests in the back. Gives you a little space for your, personal information if you want to do that. And then if we look at the page, this is how it is set up. So you've got these corner markers, and what that does is that when you take the photo using the Scribsy app, it recognizes these points and then creates the page based around that. As I said, very cool system because it has a really simple interface that allows for this system to work. So the page is lined and it's got some margins set in. It's got a margin on the left and a margin on the right here, the left margin being wider, and then you've got the header section at the top here. And said all of this sort of corresponds with the Scribsy app. Now, the pages are not numbered, but the book does lie relatively flat with very sort of minimal encouragement, which is great. It has a page marker ribbon, which, once again, nice simple feature. In the back, it's got the expandable pocket, which great, and a little pen loop. Now, for fountain pen users, this is a small pen loop. I've got here the Gravitas Entry fountain pen, which has a small end on it, and I can get that in okay, but only because of that small sort of tapered end. If I try and put something a bit bulkier, even a Lamy Safari here, it's actually kind of tricky to even get it into the pen loop. Now that may stretch out a bit over time, but I think it is designed for smaller pens, certainly for ballpoints or pencils, that kind of stuff, or pens that have a sort of a decent sort of taper or point on them. As typical of optic paper, it is a white paper. If you look at it here, in comparison to the Rhodia white, you see it is quite white. The line grid on this is, or line rule, sorry, is 6mm. So plenty of lines on the page. If you have bigger handwriting, 6 is getting on the smaller side, but it is certainly usable for sort of most people if you're using finer fountain pens for that, or rollable or ballpoints as well. As I said, this notebook is A5 size. It's 145mm by 210mm, so it's a standard size, will fit most standard notebook covers, and it's not terribly thick, being only 160 pages. So this is a really handy size for, you know, everyday carry, or if you're a student using this size notebook, or if you do things like bullet journaling but don't need the dot grid or, you know, freeform planning or something like that. It's a nice size and a good quality notebook. One of the things I think is cool about the Oxford notebook is the fact that it comes in multiple colors. There's in this sort of textured material, you are open to different colors, and I'm sure that the colors will change as this notebook continues to be available. Now, I say that it is available in Australia through Officeworks, and the notebook retails for $25 Australian. So $25 for 160 pages is not on the cheaper end of notebooks, especially from an office supplies store like Officeworks. But this is a very high quality item. There is good wear and tear on this cover. The durability is great, but also you're getting really, really good quality paper. And to check out that paper quality, I have done some writing samples in the back of this journal, using fountain pens and a couple of other kinds of pen as well. Bring you nice and close to this. So you've got Oxford A5 Journal Ink Test Optic Paper 90 GSM, and I've used TWSBI Blue Black ink in a TWSBI 580, Colourverse Delicious Sleep, a nice purple. I've got Venustus Londra. I've got in 2 different nibs, a fine and a extra fine and a broad. Terracotta from Diamine in Alamy 2000 medium, which is a very wet pen. Birmingham Relative Cadmium in a Esbrook Junior. Bleu Austral, the Jahaban in a extra fine Edison nib. Noodler's Bay State Blue in a fine nib. And then a range of sort of regular pens. So you've got an Outline fine liner, you've got a Muji gel pen, a Uniball Signo Broad, the Bic ballpoint, a highlighter, Pilot Friction, Palomino Blackwing, and a Sharpie. So you can see the pencil erased fairly well, but I did just notice I haven't tried to friction the friction. So let's do that. And that works really, really well, that being a slightly different kind of pigment ink. So now if we look at the reverse of this page, what we get is actually a good example of this optic paper. Now, this fountain pen came through a bit. This was the Bay State Blue from Noodler's. That is a really brutal ink that seems to affect most paper. It'll come through Tomoe River, it certainly comes through Rhodia. Got spots here from the Relative Cadmium from Birmingham Pen Company, and a little bit of the Bleu Austral coming through. Those are both relatively wet inks, and inks that will also be not 100% friendly on all kinds of paper. And of course the Sharpie comes through at the end here, but all these other fountain pens, including some pretty wet nibs, like that TWSBI is pretty wet, and the Lamy there is very wet, and that TWSBI 580 is very, very wet, and the TWSBI ink is very saturated, and that hasn't come through. So you can see it performs very, very nicely. Let's just do a very quick live writing sample now. I have that Gravitas Entry fountain pen here. It's inked with Robert Oster Velvet Storm. So, there's not a lot of tooth on this paper. It is relatively smooth. It's got a nice gentle feedback. It's not sort of buttery smooth like some of that Clairefontaine coated paper, but it is a nice smooth paper. There is a relatively decent dry time on the paper because it is a high weave, so it takes a little bit longer for that ink to really sort of draw in. And if you're using a wetter ink, of course, that's going to take a little bit longer to dry anyway. I can still see there are spots up here that are still relatively wet. If we turn over the page, like we have seen on the others, there's no bleeding there at all. And also we can see, like, in terms of feathering, it's very, very good, response to the ink. There is a little bit of show through, but not a lot. Like, it's not, you can definitely use both sides of this page without any issue whatsoever. And this is under like quite a direct light for filming. So we are getting a bit coming through, but in everyday use, you really don't notice it. Let's quickly go through some pros and cons. The cons. Okay, so this is a tough one because it's both a pro and a con. It's that Scribsy system. I would love if this book didn't contain those notes, those markers. I think they kind of, in a way, they kind of cheapen it just a little bit. But that system is good and it is useful, particularly if you are someone who wants to be able to easily digitally archive and send and share your notes. If you're taking meeting minutes and things like that, such an easy way of digitizing. So that's a really handy thing to be able to do. But I would love if this notebook came with a non-Scribsy version. The other thing that kind of cheapens it for me is the cover. This rubber sort of finish, it's not, like, it's durable and it does the job, but I don't know, I kind of wish that there was even that faux leather kind of cover would be nice, because it kind of feels like, I don't know, not that it's a student notebook or something, but I don't see why, if you look after your notebooks, they need to be like treated like hardware. I would also love to see a couple of things. Firstly, I would love to see one of these with more pages. A 240-ish page notebook would be amazing. Also with some different line ruling and line options, including like just a plain line with no margins and headers and things like that. Once again, that ties in with the Scribsy, but also like if Oxford could produce like dot grid journals and some, square grids and things like that, I think it opens them up to a lot more users that do things like bullet journaling. And it's amazing that they haven't come up with an internationally available bullet journal notebook yet. Pros for this: paper, paper, paper. I can't stress that enough. I cannot stress how much I enjoy this paper. Writing on it is great. For the most part, you see how well it performs. With the exception of really brutal inks, it does a pretty good job, especially for a notebook at this price, 25 Australian dollars. As I said, not super cheap, but also not like super expensive. It's certainly cheaper than things like rodeo notebooks and things like that, although you do get less pages in this. As I said, fountain pen friendly, all of that kind of stuff. I like the fact that it's a hardcover. Like, it's got a bit of flexibility for, to take some shock in your bag and things like that, but it's not, like, it's protecting itself, and that durability is great. Also, it comes in a good range of colours. The other thing I love is that in Australia, this is available through Officeworks, and if you are familiar, like Officeworks, Office Max, Staples, all those kinds of places, Officeworks is everywhere. So for me, this makes it a great option for me if I need something that is readily available, that I can just go and grab from an Officeworks store or buy relatively locally. It is made in China, and Oxford is a UK-based brand with French connections through Hamlin, but it's nice to be able to buy something in Australia that really does the job. So I hope you found this review of the Oxford A5 journal, premium journal, to be useful and helpful and interesting and all those kinds of things. Please like and subscribe, hit the notifications button if you want to stay up to date with the videos that I produce. Please feel free to get in touch using any of the platforms listed below. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at @the_offstage_me, or you can contact me on any of my videos here, or drop me an email, which is listed down below. If you've got products you think I should be looking at, or if there's a way you'd like to support the channel by sponsoring your review or providing an item for review, I would love to hear from you. It's your support, after all, that makes this channel possible. In the meantime, enjoy writing, enjoy your notebooks, and I'll talk to you soon.